All right, people, we are back. Another Sunday, another week of April, another batch of movies to cover. And this time we have two movies to cover. We have got The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare from Guy Ritchie, and we have Abigail from Radio Silence, a.k.a. Matt Bettinelli, Olpin, and Tyler Gillette. I am joined once again by Luke of Luke Reviews. Luke, are you ready to cover, as a lot of people have been calling it, The Ministry of Inglourious Basterds?
Yes, because that's kind of what it is. Just,
Indeed. Indeed it is. All of that and more on today's episode of the Talkin' TV podcast. Stay tuned. Luke, what's going on? Happy to have you back, man. Luke, I have to tell you that me just personally, I have been very, very disappointed and very let down by a majority of the movies that have come out so far in the year of 2024. It appears that, unfortunately, a lot of people's prediction was correct. The strike has unfortunately affected the quality of movies that, and really just content in general, that we have gotten so far in, quite frankly, not rather unexpected ways, but rather just ways that I feel like we all expected. And it's causing, unfortunately, the output of movies to not only be really unfortunate, but also I feel as though the movies we've gotten so far that I feel like a lot of people were hyped for and a lot of people were anticipating, I personally feel like we just haven't been getting that much from it. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the year of 2024 for movies quickly before we actually got into the two movies that we're covering today.
Well, Dom, I've watched Dune 4 times already, so
and that should tell you everything that you need to know. Yeah, and that should tell you everything that you need to know. The fact that Dune, despite now being available to rent digitally, is still doing such good repeat business in theaters almost 2 months later. I mean, I did happen to say that like Dune 2 was going to clean up and the rest of the year should just pack it up and go right home. But we've got two movies to cover now. We've got from two sets of directors, one of whom has been having one of the best comeback renaissances of, I think, any director's career. And the other two who are like directors that really broke onto the scene, two directors that really made their name as like two new like horror directors near the end of the decade. That being Matt Bettinelli, Olpin, and Tyler Gillette, aka Radio Silence, who broke out with Ready or Not in 2019 and then have spent the last couple of years directing the last couple of Scream movies. Scream, or Scream 5, which was released in January 2022, and then Scream 6, which was released in April of last year. But they have returned with another original horror movie. They announced sometime last year. This is before the drama of Melissa Barrera exiting Scream and everything, that they were going to be directing a new horror movie and that it was going to be based around a vampire. And they said, and then about, I want to say, around this time last year, we got the first trailer for it. Called Abigail. It is about a group of robbers that consists of a very eclectic group of actors that kidnap a young girl only to discuss and keep her at a compound. She's a billionaire's daughter. They're attempting to extort them for ransom. They all have the reasons for it, only to discover that, surprise, surprise, the little girl that they've kidnapped turns out to be a vampire, and her name is Abigail. Now, this would have been a lot more cool of a premise and a lot more interesting if the trailer hadn't completely spoiled the twist that she is a vampire. It's once again an instance of a modern movie needing to spoil and give you all the details. And it's really disappointing because the first half of this movie goes from being a pretty awesome setup to being kind of predictable and kind of a drag because you're kind of just waiting for the twist to happen. You're like, okay, I've seen in the trailer. I know exactly what's going to happen. She's going to, be revealed to be a vampire at some point. Like, why are we just sitting here waiting around? And unfortunately, it causes the first half of this movie to be a little bit of a drag because this is a pretty interesting setup of a movie. It's a hostage movie that turns into a horror movie. It's a nice little blending and mix of genres. I think the cast is really good. I think Radio Silence do fantastic with the direction as well, especially once we get into like, the action bits. This turns into like, the thing that these two directors have really done well is that they've made really good like exploitation horror. Is what it's done. It's not just like simple like bottle horror or like, with all of the jump scares and everything. It's really good exploitation horror with the one-liners and the fun like self-aware bits and the choreography, which is absolutely insane because the little girl is a ballerina as well. I have to say that Melissa Barrera made probably the smartest decision that she could have ever made when she, made those Palestinian comments and got out of the Scream movies, because oh man, if she keeps doing original stuff like this, I'm gonna be really, really happy. What's it called? I will say that there are plenty of goofy twists and turns. I will also say that after 2 weeks ago when we did Godzilla, or rather 3 weeks ago now, when we did Godzilla and Kong, this is officially going to be the year of Dan Stevens. I can tell you that right now. He was the best part about Godzilla and Kong. He's the best part about this movie. There's a twist with his character at the end that you do not see coming that ends up becoming, pretty fun for the rest of the movie. And then he's also going to be in Neon's Cuckoo, which comes out in August. Can't wait for that. So, Luke, I know you have not gotten a chance to watch Abigail yet because, unfortunately, it has not been made available to you. But
it has, but I just haven't had the time.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure yet. Well, hopefully, hopefully, I've generated enough hype in order for you to want to see it. Luke, what is your general thoughts on how they seem to be bringing back vampire movies in an interesting and fun and clever way in the wake of Twilight?
Well, I guess, yeah, the vampires used to be scary, like back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Your Stephen King's Salem's Lot and a bunch of other novels. And then, of course, the Twilight effect where the vampires, they're sexy now.
Yes.
But in recent years, and lately, I watched Midnight Mass for the first time.
Yes.
Which is like incredible vampire horror.
Yes.
So I guess it's a turn into back to the original state of vampires and reminding people what they originally were meant to be, not just like, ooh, they play baseball now.
To Muse a supermassive black hole. Yes. But no, I couldn't agree more. And the thing that's about this that is about this movie is that it isn't just about the scares, and it doesn't end up becoming a slaughter fest like we're meant to believe from the trailer. There is some genuine heart, there is some genuine connection between these characters. Melissa Barrera's character does have like a tragic twist to her, even if it does get a little bit unbelievable, especially with the choreography, especially with like certain of the backstory. I will say that in terms of like the order that they pick off these characters, there are quite a lot of surprises, which I do have to admire. They don't just rely on the typical jump scares. Characters that you think are going to make it all the way through get axed off quick, and then characters that you think are going to get axed off really quick end up like making it a lot longer than you thought. I will say this movie is also, unfortunately, due to his tragic passing last year, this movie does mark the final appearance of Angus Cloud, aka Fezco from Euphoria. So that was a little bit tragic, but he gives a really funny performance. Catherine Newton is in this movie as kind of like the dumb ditzy blonde who also happens to be a good hacker. She results in one of my absolute favorite lines in the movie that Dan Stevens says when she attempts to substitute onions for garlic. And then Dan Stevens turns right to her and is like, Sammy, those are fucking onions. And it is one of the funniest lines that I've heard in any movie recently. What's it called? I will also say that in addition, you have Giancarlo Esposito in this movie because Giancarlo Esposito is officially the new Samuel L. Jackson / Pedro Pascal, and that he is contractually obligated to appear in everything. There is a fun, goofy twist with his character, but still, it gets slightly frustrating when you keep seeing him in everything. Not to mention the fact that you also have Matthew Good, who randomly pops in at the end of this movie, and I won't spoil what his character is, but it is quite a fun and interesting twist. I will say that, but I also do want to give a massive shout out as well to Alicia Weir, who portrays Abigail herself. Definitely like one of the most like engaging and probably surprising breakout performances recently, and just quite frankly fun. And that you have like a little girl who was probably 12 when they were filming this. She's 14 now, but they were she was probably around like 12 or 13 when she was filming this, who literally has to go from like being this scared, precocious, innocent little girl to being this crazy, like bloodthirsty, nutso monster who's shrieking and everything and dancing with corpses to like, kind of this like shit talking, like loudmouth who's kind of making fun of the characters and being like, no, you idiots, I'm the freaking like killer here. So I thought that was kind of fun. So I guess just that, like, after my final thoughts are that after a couple of movies that have just been like really, really disappointing overall throughout the year, save for a couple of surprises, Immaculate was a surprise. Monkey Man was quite a surprise. Civil War was a surprise in the sense that it was so much worse than I possibly thought it could be. Yeah, I gotta say, Abigail, definitely one of my favorite watches of the year. I'm giving this one a 4-star, a solid, consistent 4-star. I heavily recommend this for everybody to watch. Also, so it appears that 2024 is going to be like the year where only the horror movies are good. And I have to say that between Immaculate, and also I'm hearing that The First Omen is great. Like, what? Who saw that one coming? But yeah, I heavily, thoroughly recommend Abigail, like, for sure. I think that everybody who watches this movie is going to have an absolute blast with it. If you like ensemble horror, You know, I also forgot to mention the Kevin Durant, who's probably best known for portraying the Blob in X-Men Origins Wolverine, is one of the best parts about this movie as like the meathead who turns out to be a heart of gold, to have the heart of gold. So yeah, like I said, I heavily recommend this. It was a good time.
Well, I'm a big fan of Ready or Not and their 2 Scream movies,
Yes.
so I will be watching this at some point.
And I will say there is an element of Ready or Not that made that movie so entertaining that they incorporate into this movie as well, and it is absolutely hilarious. So that's all I'm gonna, in terms of like what characters do when they die in certain ways. So if you've seen the ending of Ready or Not, you know what I'm talking about. So I just want to, you know, prep people and make them aware of that. Now, Luke, let's move into what we were really here for. Again, we complained so much back in February about how our boy, Henry Cavill, has been getting nothing but screwed over by Hollywood. And now, Luke, we asked for it, and we got it. And who was able to deliver it? But none other than Guy Ritchie. I think it's ironic that in the same vein that I watched Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, I also finally was able to watch Guy Ritchie's directorial debut, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, which has to be in the Hall of Fame as far as being one of the all-time directorial debuts. And now it feels like, as the director who has been compared the most to Tarantino in terms of his movies visually and aesthetically and writing-wise feeling the most, it is fitting that, you know, in the year that we unfortunately have lost Tarantino's final movie, the movie critic.
I was wondering how you can react to that.
As he has decided to pursue, unfortunately, another project which will unfortunately deprive us of another for another couple years of his final project. We get Guy Ritchie's latest attempt at, you know, not mimicking, but emulating Tarantino, let's say, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is based in truth on Winston Churchill's private memoirs that were made available in 2016. The movie makes a very big point of showing that off at the beginning. And I mean, Luke, I just like, similar to how we talked about what we talked about Ambulance, what we talked about a couple movies in the last couple of years, I feel like this is a movie that's like directly made for us. You know, it's like, it's got the historical aspect. It has Henry Cavill. You have just a bunch of dudes just like walking around, mowing people down with machine guns. It's got espionage. It's got like sexy girls like dancing around. It's like, it's so funny to me because this movie is like, it is Guy Ritchie's attempt at Bond, which we're going to get into how this connects so well to Bond, while at the same time
it connects very well to Bond.
Very well, yeah. and well, also just like having Guy Ritchie's like own specific flourishes and touch. I guess we should probably start by talking about like this very strange but kind of unexpectedly incredible renaissance that he's been having, because Guy Ritchie, right, was a director who made his way up through the 2000s, kind of being known for making these Tarantino-esque, you know, little fun crime movies, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, Rock and Roll It in the late 2000s. He's also kind of in a weird way responsible for getting Jason Statham's career started, who was an Olympic swimmer before he decided to get into acting. Teamed up with Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughn, who are making this little crime movie that comes out in 1998. Guy Ritchie directing, Matthew Vaughn producing, and he goes on to have this slew of action movies, right, and becomes one of the biggest action stars of the last 20 years. While Guy Ritchie, you know, unfortunately has a couple of stumbles. You know, he's married to Madonna in a move that both affected his career in some of the worst ways possible. Then he gets back to his guns with this little crime movie called Rock and Roll It, which stars several stars that we know and appreciate. You know, Gerard Butler, Tom Hardy, Idris Elba, Toby Kebbell, Jeremy Piven, Tom Wilkinson, Mark Strong. You know, the list goes on and on. Ludacris, I believe, is in that movie. Then he's kind of stuck in blockbuster hell for a little bit, where he makes the Sherlock Holmes movies, which are pretty successful, I would say. Those movies are pretty well received. It's the height of Robert Downey Jr. right after he's finished the first Iron Man. Then he goes and he does The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which is kind of like a throwback to, you know, and it's kind of similar to Mission Impossible in the sense that it's a throwback to another TV series from the 60s. You know, it's in a weird way Henry Cavill's audition tape for Bond. It's the first major thing he does after Superman. It's him and Armie Hammer as two agents from opposing sides that have to team up in kind of like efforts in order to spearhead USSR relations during the Cold War. Then he goes back to doing blockbusters, and he has two movies that kind of don't do so well. You know, he has King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, which was a movie that I think was supposed to intended to be a lot bigger than it wanted to be. Unfortunately, it came out in 2017, which was, you know, the worst summer for blockbusters ever. This is the summer where we got efforts like Alien Covenant, like The Mummy, like Baywatch, like Transformers: The Last Night, like the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean movie. So
that was supposed to be like a 5-movie franchise sort of thing, but
and it got one.
He cast David Beckham. That's just about it.
That went nowhere. And then he did Disney's Aladdin live action remake, which I know a lot of people enjoy. I personally, that was the year that made me swear off watching any Disney live action remake ever again. So take that with a grain of salt. Take that for what you will. But then COVID happens, and it feels like he almost was like, okay, what movie did I enjoy the most of those like last 5 movies that I listed? What movie did I enjoy making the most? Oh, Man from U.N.C.L.E. And he pretty much just like decided to make movies like that again and like officially say, okay, I have the chance to like make a movie every year now if I want to. That could be exactly like that. That's exactly what he does. He does The Gentleman in 2020, which is like another ensemble-based crime movie, but this time with bigger stars. You know, he gets Matthew McConaughey, he gets Charlie Hunnam, he gets Colin Farrell, he gets Hugh Grant, which also kind of spearheads this new Hugh Grant renaissance that we've been living through, you know, where Hugh Grant has just been killing it in recent like crime efforts and also recently in Wonka. He is Wrath of Man, which is like an action movie, but like that, that mixes 3 different short stories together that kind of all interconnect. Then he does Operation Fortune, which is like another like tongue-in-cheek like Bond ripoff, but it's got Aubrey Plaza in it. Then he does The Covenant, which is like a very strange like but really weirdly earnest like movie, like war movie about Jake Gyllenhaal going to attempt to save his translator after he gets kidnapped. And now it's all been building to here, which I believe this movie is probably the biggest budgeted of all of his movies. But you have a movie that is essentially a mix between like The Great Escape and several other like war movies like from around that time period. You know, I get elements of The Great Escape, I get elements of A Bridge Too Far. You know, all these like massively budgeted World War II movies that featured a ton of people that came out between the 60s and early 70s. And so immediately off the bat, I can say that this movie feels like a throwback to those kinds of movies. You know, I don't know if you've watched too many of those movies from that time period, but I feel like
I've seen The Great Escape, so I need to watch more. I did enjoy that one.
I feel like that's a time period that you would enjoy, particularly given obviously your fondness for Bond and the fondness for the types of movies that you enjoy. So Luke, off the bat immediately, now that we've seen it, what can you say about the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare?
I think this is, well, first of all, I haven't actually seen a Guy Ritchie movie since The Gentleman. I just haven't been that interested in them. But The Gentleman it's more memeable than it is good, I think. But that's absolutely fine.
So much so that he even ended up remaking it as a Netflix TV series this year.
Is that any good?
In one of the most bizarre moves, it's one of the best things I've seen so far this year. It's a lot different from the movie, though. It's not as funny.
But then I probably won't watch it if there's no Raimundo.
Oh, it's still good though. It's still very, very good though.
Anyway, as I stated in my review, this is probably kind of like the ceiling for Guy Ritchie of what he can bring to the table. As like in the past I've branded him as an off-brand Tarantino, as we do. But this was as good as I was hoping it to be. I watched the trailer. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be off-brand Bastards, but I really love Bastards, so it's going to be good either way. And it was very, very enjoyable. Just in and out of the movie theater, good time. I felt better going out than I did going in, so I have absolutely no real complaints.
I could not agree more. I would just had a big old smile on my face the entire time I was watching this, where I'm like, this feels like everything that I've wanted from Guy Ritchie for years. So, you know, you've got. And it just has everything that you could want in a movie. You have wisecracking characters. You have killing Nazis. You just have an overall feel-good sense of like, okay, we're actually doing something right for the world. And that is overall like in the service of something greater than ourselves. You've got, again, just like, you have incredible action. You have a firm sense of historical epicness. You have spy and espionage stuff. It's another situation, again, why they compare this to Bastards, because it has 2 subplots. You've got the main plot, which is Henry Cavill and his crew as they're kind of like on their little fishing boat, as they're deep undercover, subcontracted out directly by Churchill.
I enjoyed that part of the movie a lot more than the other one.
That's the thing. Like it is a situation where there are 2 plots going on. One is significantly stronger and more entertaining, I would say, than the other, but it's not enough to take away from my overall enjoyable viewpoint. I will say that.
Does they even have Hugo Stiglitz playing
the Nazi in this one? They do. I just pointed that out to my friend. I was like, wow, the connections run deep here. The connections run very deep. You even have somebody getting close to a Nazi, only this time instead of Daniel Bruhl, it is Hugo Stiglitz himself, Till Schweiger. And what's it called? So let's break down exactly, you know, kind of where this movie is drawing its influences from. Then we'll talk about the cast, because oh man, like this might be one of my favorite ensemble casts that I've seen in a while, because it's just so unexpected in terms of like kind of where they pull from, and where it almost feels like with this main group, I don't even know what you call them because they don't really have a nickname, but with this main group, it feels like Guy Ritchie is
They're
like
the Avengers. Like they get their name at the end of the movie. Like,
that's true. They do get the Avengers. Yes. What's called? See, I thought that they were also going to be like the foundation for the original foundation for MI5. But essentially, what you have is Winston Churchill subcontracted out this private group of off the beaten path soldiers in a mission that was off the books. As they said, it's like, if we're caught by the Brits, we'll be arrested. If we're caught by the Nazis, we'll get killed. That basically sees this small group of soldiers that have to travel around the coast of Africa in order to sabotage the Germans' U-boat effort. So essentially during World War II, the reason why it was taking the Americans so long to join the war effort, and the reason why the Brits were doing so poorly at first, is because the Germans had an advantage, which was their submarines, their U-boats, which were sinking a vast majority of the British ships. And because they had a lot of supply chains directly off Africa, they were able to keep their navy so well serviced, which of course was preventing the American efforts from winning the war. So they had to subcontract out this private group in order to go and, you know, basically find the source of the U-boat supply, which is on this island off the coast of Africa. I believe it was called, the operation was called, let me just Google this real quickly.
I forget.
The operation was called Operation Postmaster. British special operation conducted on the Spanish island of Fernando Po, also known as Bioko, carried out by a small raiding force. Their objective was to board Italian and German ships in the harbor and then sail them to Lagos under the command of Major Gus Mart Phillips, portrayed in the film by Henry Cavill, who is believed to be the original inspiration for James Bond, as one of the one of the agents that is working directly under Churchill at the time is none other than Ian Fleming, the author of James Bond.
He even does the Fleming.
Ian Fleming, yes, portrayed by Freddie Fox, who has been making quite the comeback recently in Slow Horses, and who will also be making his appearance in House of the Dragon Season 2 as Alison Hightower's brother, Gwen Hightower. So, I mean, I just thought the comparisons there were great, because it's like, oh, that's actually kind of cool what Guy Ritchie's doing here. He's literally combining like two of his favorite things. He's combining spies with, like, you know, bushwhacking man on a mission war movies, you know, with like, you know, kind of the and so I think kind of immediately off the bat, the mix of those two genres already helps set this movie apart from being like kind of just like stuck in its own genre. Because other than that, like I said, the movie, in a weird way, it feels like what Tom Cruise is doing with Mission Impossible, you know, but at the same time, it feels like more fun. You know, it almost feels like if Quentin Tarantino directed a James Bond movie, which I think he's talked about doing that in the past. You know, I feel like that would be interesting, and I feel like that this would be like the closest to it. I also get the sense of like, you know, the Howling Commandos from Captain America, you know, this squad of like soldiers that goes deep undercover in order to just bring it directly to the Nazis. So again, as I've said before, the allusions and comparisons to Inglourious Basterds are there. But I feel like, again, it's the thing that Guy Ritchie has always done well enough. He's always had such a significant, like, an original flair that it's able to not feel like your typical run-of-the-mill, like, ripoff or homage thing. As far as the other plot, which you were correct. So like I said, you have the main plot of Henry Cavill and his bastards. I'm just going to call them that for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And then you have the other one, which is
the gentleman.
The gentleman, yes. And then you have this other team as well, consisting of Isa Gonzalez and Babs Olusun Mokun, who, again, is a name that I feel like he has become the new Adewale Akinye Agbaye, and that he's in everything, but he has one of the most unpronounceable names in Hollywood, where he was Yamas in Dune. He was in Wrath of Man. He's been in the last couple of Guy Ritchie efforts. He appeared in a Black Mirror episode as well. He's been in quite a few things. I believe he's also in Star Trek New Worlds, Strange New Worlds as well. He's been in quite a few things, so he's been making the rounds as well. And their kind of job is to kind of go around on the island and collect kind of information and transmit it to them. And we spend quite a bit of time with them. It's kind of a tedious task, but again, you also get to see Isa Gonzalez like seduce Til Schweiger and have it be really classical and really sexy. She's another one that's really been making the rounds, you know, since I first saw her in Baby Driver, and then she has also been in, we also talked about her a couple weeks ago in Three Body Problem as well. And she's also in, her big breakout was in the From Dusk Till Dawn series. She was also in Alita Battle Angel. But for me, like, kind of her major, like, oh, she can actually like really act, was in Ambulance, where I thought that she would, yeah. So that's three things now that Isa Gonzalez has been in that we kind of both love. So that's a quite an interesting coincidence there. But so, yeah, Luke, the main cast, the Bastards. Oh, man. I mean, first of all, you talked about it in your review as well, how this is finally the movie that after he was done so dirty in Argyle, that like this is the movie that gives us Henry Cavill. You know, he's got a big old bushy beard. He's very classical, but he also is like a rogue. He's a charming rogue. He steals cigars and brandy in his introductory scene, and he loves getting jackets wherever he can go. I love the bit at the beginning where he like offers a cigar to the one soldier, and then he fakes it out. It's like, nope, they're mine. And that's before we even meet his squad. Like,
it's like, look what Henry Cavill can do when you give him something to do.
Yes.
He's just an incredible screen presence. He's very funny. Like, the two women next to me thought everything that he did was absolutely funny. Even though it was just like a little thing, it's like, that's funny. No, funniest thing they've ever seen. So I don't know if that.
I don't know. I don't know if that was influenced by some
experience.
other forces there.
Yeah, I had a feeling as well, but no, his little character traits like I need to wear the biggest jacket that I can.
So it's great. It's honestly
his chemistry with the rest of the crew is great. Alan Richardson, he's maybe my favorite in this.
Easily mine as well.
I've only seen him in Fast X, but I feel like
I feel this is a vast improvement, and he's also putting that not only that clout but that training that he got from Reacher as officially the new biggest man in Hollywood to very, very good use. I would say, hard to imagine.
I have to watch Reacher after this.
Yes,
and he's very serious in that one, but he's still cool.
Yes, but he's quite fun in this as the team's muscle. He's got this thing where he prefers using bows and arrows over guns. There's a scene where he every time you get to see him snipe people out of the sky is always very, very entertaining. And that's not to take away from the rest of the cast. You have Hero finds Tiffin from the after movies as I don't know what exactly his role, but he's for lack of a better word, the kid of the group. He's he's their infiltrator. You have Henry Golding, who after being in Crazy Rich Asians was determined to not be typecast as a romantic lead after how poorly Last Christmas went. So he is officially signed up with Guy Ritchie as well. He's fantastic in The Gentleman. He had a little bit of a stumble with Snake Eyes, but he's their demolitions and explosives expert. And then you have Alex Pettyfer, number 4 himself from I Am Number 4. He was having kind of a little bit of an unlucky run in the bit of the early 2000s. He's back, and he's a lot older now, too. He's like their number 2 / their master planner. He's got a lot of information. One of the first scenes that you see with these guys is them infiltrating a Nazi camp and just killing everyone in the sequence that was well utilized in the trailers. That's the scene where you got Henry Cavill laughing at the one Nazi's joke before, they murder them all. You have Henry Golding taking out a machine gun. You have Alan Richardson throwing the grenade in and blowing up the insert. And then they come in, they see Alex Pettyfer chained up with the car battery strapped to his nipples, and they're immediately making jokes about it. I'm like, okay, I'm in. This is gonna be one of those movies. I'm automatically in. They're cracking jokes all the time about being in imminent danger, but yet you still care enough about them that you feel them being in imminent danger, even though they're very, very good at what they do. It was just nice to see a movie again where you see characters being good at something, especially a squad that's as effective as this is having to accomplish something as important as this, because essentially, when they get to the main mission, as they're kind of all the parties are leading up there, how do you think about how well this movie was paced as well? Because for a 2-hour movie, I thought it was perfectly well paced. I didn't think it was too long, but I didn't think it was too short either, because I feel like that's a big problem that I've been having with movies now. Movies are either way too long or way too short, and I don't get enough from them.
Yeah, I feel like it was well paced. To start the movie with them kind of already on the mission, then you flash back to the intro. That always helps a little bit. Just the cutting between the Isa Gonzalez portion to the Henry Cavill portion that created a dynamic of sorts, and then it all comes together in the finale. Different POVs coming together is always a great finale for anything.
Yes,
so, and the finale lives up to it.
Indeed.
Soon as they, we can't blow up the boat.
Yes.
So we're going to steal the boat.
Because basically what the finale does something very clever in the sense that it cues you up for an Inglourious Basterds, okay, this is going to be blood and guts and shooting and nonstop and everyone's going to die sort of a thing. And it's okay, if we're going to go out, we're going to go out swinging. But instead it kind of transitions because of one little plot detail that they discover at a party where Isa Gonzalez gives one of the, it's not quite Salma Hayek in From Dusk Till Dawn, but it's almost there, where she gives this absolutely astonishing, ravishing performance. Distracting all the Nazis in this white dress, singing everything. It's very classical. It's very, very Casablanca and old school Bond. And she was just showing off, and I was like, oh man, Isa, baby, if you ever want my number, it's right here. But I digress. What was I saying? Sorry, I was a little distracted there. It ends up turning into distracted myself. It ends up turning into a heist movie of the highest regard, but you still get that awesome action and intrigue where they essentially have to this massive U-boat that they were going to blow up. The hull has been reinforced with steel, so they have to steal it now. So it essentially involves them taking over 2 other boats, while also Alan Ritchson and Alex Pettyfer, along with a squad of pirates who they team up with, who has their captain has an awesome bonding moment with Henry Cavill when he's like, "Wait a minute, you went to Eton, didn't you?" And you know, because apparently they both went to Eton, so there's a little bit of a connection there. I just thought that was a really fun little detail where it's like, "Oh man, you know, we were like best friends now." And then you get to see this awesome sequence of, man, every time Alan Ritchson is fighting with people, it's like the camera just focuses on him, and it's like, okay, we're now all of a sudden going to turn into like John Wick all of a sudden in order to like really show off, okay, this guy has the action chops. Because the rest of the guys, it's kind of just that like placing explosives or shooting like machine guns a lot. But whenever it's Alan Ritchson,
he has a hammer or
he has well, no, first it's bow and arrows. Then when he's on the ship, it turns into an axe. And there's a sequence where Alex Pettyfer and the one pirate are just looking through the window, and they're seeing him just like swinging the axe, just taking out people left and right. And then then he comes up to the window and he's like, I hope that's not your blood. And he's like, oh, me neither. So
would you buy him as Batman with the talks?
He's very big. He's very big, and the choreography I could absolutely see him getting. I don't know if I could see him like nailing the Bruce Wayne persona. I feel like that would be a little bit too Ben Affleck or Michael Keaton-esque, you know, where it's like I need to see the two sides as well. You know, it's in a weird way kind of part of my criticisms of Pattinson, which is where, because we only really got to see Pattinson as Batman, we didn't really get to see him as Bruce Wayne. Yeah. And they did that very purposefully, but it's like, I like the Batman. There's a reason why I like Christian Bale so much, because I need to see a Batman that can handle both the dark side and the Bruce Wayne persona. And so far I have yet to see a Batman that could really do both effectively outside of Christian Bale. But I still have hope. You know, we'll see what James Gunn brings. Personally, I think Jensen Ackles would be a much better choice for me.
I leave it to the casting people, but I wouldn't mind seeing Alan Ritchson.
Yes. Now, Alan Ritchson is a Batman villain. That's a different story. That I can absolutely see. But as Batman, yeah, I'm not quite sure. What did you think of this movie's like comparison to history, especially since that like I've heard that it is very, very loosely based on history? There's a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, they were definitely taking a lot of liberties for sure.
I didn't even Google that at all. I was like, okay, probably like half of this happened, if even. So like, just take the basic template. It's like, for biopics, I'm more like stingy about that sort of thing. But this is like a fun movie. Like you can kind of twist the
exactly. It's a fun movie where you're just like going along with it in order to enjoy yourself. You know, it's not the type of movie where you're like, oh, I need to know like every single bit of how this was adapted. Like this isn't Dunkirk, for lack of a better word, but I do find it interesting that they do reference the events of Dunkirk in this movie. I thought that was a lot of fun as well. Like I said, for me, it's like knowing that this is based on partially history and enjoying like World War II epics. Like I said, it's part of the reason why I enjoyed the Suicide Squad so much, where it's like, just take a bunch of people, drop them in like an isolated war setting and just let them go at it in terms of just killing as many of the enemy forces as possible. And then let the intrigue and suspense build and with the twists, you know, this, like I said, this one was a lot more. And the other thing too, that I mentioned as well, is that it's got a lot more British sensibilities, which I don't think that people would necessarily like. I don't think that that's something that people would necessarily expect as far as making a difference, but it really does make a difference as well. And I also like how with all the characters, it's pretty much like, okay, they have their motivations for why they hate the Nazis. You know, they're going to go to it and they're going to get this done. And that's really that. You know, it is much more so about the mission and kind of how the pieces all kind of build towards this one massive heist, essentially. And I think it's well handled, and I really, really enjoyed it. In terms of like where this ranks within my Letterboxd, I would say
Carrie Elwes shows up.
Carrie Elwes shows up as well. But Carrie Elwes has been in the last couple, you know, we already kind of got that in Operation Fortune. So like we've been seeing quite a bit. It's actually kind of funny that you bring that up. Carrie Elwes, let me tell you the amount of new movies I've seen Carrie Elwes in. Carrie Elwes recently so far has been Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, 2 Rebel Moon movies, and Black Christmas, and Mission Impossible.
Rebel Moon?
Yes, he was. He's the king in Rebel Moon.
I missed that. I watched that today.
He has been in a lot of things, and he's in the last Mission Impossible. So Carrie Elwes has been making quite the rounds, not to mention being in the 3rd season of Stranger Things. So Rebel Moon, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I have not gotten a chance to watch Rebel Moon Part 2 yet. The Scargiver, which is currently dropped on Netflix. I watched about like the first 10-15 minutes. So, Luke, this was an object of much controversy, both back in December when Part 1 dropped on Netflix, as well as recently when Zack Snyder was on the Joe Rogan podcast and tried to make the claim that more people watched Rebel Moon than watched Barbie in theaters, which I'm interested as to how he got those statistics, but like the internet just seems like consistent back to clowning Zack Snyder.
There's just one guy at Netflix who's like telling him some fake statistics.
Yeah, I'm
making up his own.
I'm not quite sure
interpreting those.
I'm not quite sure exactly how that works. You know, we all know how accurate the statistics in Netflix are. But you watch Rebel Moon Part 1 and Child of Fire. I just wanted to get your thoughts real quick on that before we got out of here.
Look, the best compliment I can give both of them, because I watched the second one today, just like in the corner of my laptop while I was doing something, which heightened my enjoyment.
That's hilarious.
Every now and then I look up, ooh, action sequence.
Yes.
The best compliment I would give this is that the trailer for this should be played at the beginning of Tropic Thunder.
I agree.
The type of movie that this is. It's
yeah.
Like, okay. There was like some. It was like the premiere of the first one, like some Netflix executive or something was like, well, we would like to have this be at one point your favorite franchise. And like, bro, you at least get the first one right or something.
Right.
No, I did not have a great time. And it's
like, the first one is literally like if they took the first third of the Avengers and made that an entire movie and then just had like one battle sequence at the end. And that was it. Like,
the second movie is like it's very Deathly Hallows Part 2, where it's like the beginning is a bit like, oh, here's what happened in the last movie, and then it's like battle all the way through.
Okay. So the whole movie's a battle. That's interesting, at least.
I think that's what I saw. Like every now and then, I just looked up. Like,
you're like, I watched the movie. I promise. I just don't remember what happened in it.
Like there's some slow mo, like Jimon Hansu. He's like farming.
What a surprise! So you're saying that it's another movie that should have been an hour that Zack Snyder stretched out into another 2 hours by making every action sequence slow motion. Yeah,
look, and I'm like a defender of his Justice League. I really
I loved his Justice League. His 4 hour long Justice League surprised the hell out of me.
But this is like, no, Zach, leave the writing to the writers and you make your cool slow-mo effects.
Damn.
Because I enjoy when he's doing like action sequences, but his story and his writing.
It's the thing that everyone says. He should have been a cinematographer.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's tough. It's very, very tough, unfortunately.
Zack Snyder does it again.
Zack Snyder does it again. And don't forget, we're also getting his 4 hour long merged rated R version.
Okay, I'm not watching that. This
I don't know.
Grandpappy Star Wars.
He claims it's a different version. He claims it's different than the ones that we have. So,
you know, this happens a lot in filmmaking. Like Spielberg wanted to make Bond, he made Indiana Jones. The Duffer Brothers wanted to make It, they made Stranger Things. Zack Snyder wanted to make Star Wars, he made Rebel Moon. So, and
the Guy Ritchie wanted to make Inglourious Basterds, and now we have Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. So it all comes full circle. I wonder what the next one of these that we're gonna get. That's actually like an interesting thing that we can consider. Directors who were inspired by one thing and made something completely different that either was or was not good.
Well, we can come up with a list, and
that actually could be quite interesting. That actually could be quite interesting. But yeah, Luke. So unfortunately, we do have to make this one a little bit of a shorter episode. But Luke, thank you for hopping on once again. Give us your final thoughts and star ratings for Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Final thoughts: an enjoyable movie. Everything I wanted from it. Kind of the Guy Ritchie ceiling. I'm not the biggest on his movies. I think Man from U.N.C.L.E. is his best movie, and this was kind of in the vein of that. So I give it a high 3.5 stars.
Yeah, for me, as a fan of Guy Ritchie, when he hits, he doesn't always hit, but when he does, he hits. And I had an absolute blast, an absolute joy with this one. I appreciate that, like, he is willing to expand outside of like other genres as well. And I'm interested to see what he does next. His next movie is going to be an Apple TV Plus movie called Fountain of Youth, starring John Krasinski and Natalie Portman. I'm very interested to see what that movie's going to consist of. As for this one, I enjoyed it. I'm glad that we have Henry Cavill back, at least for now. I'll wait until the next instance when Hollywood screws him over. But now that he's expecting a kid, who knows when we're going to see him again. So I give this movie a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I heavily enjoyed it. I heavily recommend watching it, especially since there is such a drought in theaters right now. But like I said, we're having a little bit of a comeback for the next couple weeks. Finally, we got Challengers next week. We got Fall Guy the week after that. Then we're into the summer with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And then it really gets kicked off. Furiosa, what's called Inside Out 2, Bike Riders, The Watchers,
a bunch of TV,
Bad Boys 4, a lot of TV. We get The Boys and House of the Dragon in 2 months. It's going to be a solid, jam-packed summer of content, to say the least. And then we're going to wrap it, like I said, with Luke and I, with the premiere of Talking Lost. Luke, I hope you're getting prepped for it. I hope you're getting prepped.
I have to finish my thesis first.
Well, finish your thesis first. Finish that first. And then we're gonna prep you, and then we're gonna have you truly lost. It's funny. I was doing a throwback. I was rewatching Chris's birthday stream that we did a couple of years ago that you popped on for a little bit for. And when we were talking about Lost, and we asked you your thoughts, you were like, "I am lost," and that was the beginning of like, "Oh, this guy Luke, he's gonna be around for a while, for sure."
Well, I'm still here, so it must have been a good thing to say.
Indeed, you are. Like I said, we have you marked out for Fall Guys, so we'll have you back on for them. But in the meantime, Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. Come summer, I would like to put out some videos. So you can look out for that.
Absolutely. Yes, I as well have also just put out a new video on my channel, Top 10 Movies Turning 10 in 2024. I've also started to work on a couple of new projects as well that will be released on the channel. So in the meantime, what's it called? You can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. You should follow the official Talking TV podcast across all platforms. This episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts tomorrow. Be sure to click subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube and Twitch. And in the meantime, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time for Challengers and the Shogun finale. Stay tuned.